On this Monday night, the presidential summit that's left the world stunned. Donald Trump sides with Russia over his own intelligence agencies, a move described by supporters and critics as disgraceful, shameful, and tantamount to treason. So why does the U.S. president trust a foreign adversary accused of attacking American democracy over his own allies? And the science behind keeping cool. As another heat wave grips much of Canada, the new technology that could predict and prevent heat stroke. And why a foul-smelling flower is attracting thousands of fans. This is The National. To be a fly on the wall today behind closed doors with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, one meeting and decades of tension appeared to melt away. Especially odd considering the backdrop. Just days ago, 12 Russian intelligence officers were charged for hacking computers and stealing documents in the last U.S. presidential election. Our coverage begins tonight with Susan Ormiston in Helsinki.
So curious, the Finns, to eyeball these two larger-than-life presidents invading their capital. In a remarkable day, Donald Trump doubled down on his resolve to get closer to Vladimir Putin, sweeping aside years of Russian isolation, choosing to engage rather than shame.
Our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago.
In a private meeting over 2 hours and in public, the two shared compliments, deflected differences, and defended each other in the politically toxic issue of Russian interference in the U.S. election.
The Russian state has never interfered and is not going to interfere into internal American affairs, including...
Trump agreed.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
Putting him squarely at odds with U.S. intelligence. The news conference was delayed briefly when the U.S. Secret Service sniffed out a journalist.
Excuse me.
Carrying a hand-scrawled sign against nuclear arms. They pulled him out under protest.
You're grabbing me for what?
Once underway, the meeting threw up other interesting detail.
Does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Putin laughed but didn't directly deny. Trump didn't find it funny.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago.
The Russian president also confirmed.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election?
Yes, he said, a rare admission. In Moscow, a journalist and Putin critic called it a Kremlin score.
Donald Trump looked at me as a freshman in international politics. I think that Putin very successfully, very forcefully got as much as he could out of this summit.
Vladimir Putin left tonight saying he was grateful to Donald.
Both presidents achieved what they came here for, that is to end the isolation and reopen diplomatic dialogue between Russia and the United States. Trump said this is the start. They will meet more often. What he didn't say is whether he could fend off the opposition and fallout back home.
In a week of disrupting diplomacy, the president outdid himself here. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Helsinki.
About that fallout Susan mentioned, there was disbelief, even outrage. As the CBC's Paul Hunter tells us, U.S. politicians on both sides of the aisle were criticizing their president.
Long before Trump's plane got anywhere near the U.S. tonight, he's now home from Helsinki. It was a country in a kind of collective disbelief. Democrats and Republicans stunned by Trump effectively choosing Putin's word over that of his own intelligence community.
I just felt like the president's comments made us look as a nation more like a pushover, and I was disappointed in that.
Republican Senator John McCain called it a disgraceful performance, labeling Trump naive and egotistical. Former CIA Chief John Brennan said it was nothing short of treasonous, with other lawmakers branding Trump's position shameful, jaw-dropping, and a national embarrassment.
A single ominous question now hangs over the White House.
The question, wondered the top Democrat in the Senate, is, when it comes to Trump's comments, why did he put Russian interests first?
The only possible explanation for this dangerous behavior is the possibility that President Putin holds damaging information over President Trump.
If that's the question, this is now the challenge to American lawmakers. Take a stand.
I think in the coming days, it'll be time for all of us to stand up and say, which side are we on?
Still, most of the Republicans targeting Trump today are regular Trump critics. There remain Trump backers aplenty. Here's the vice president's take on today.
But what the world saw, what the American people saw, is that President Donald Trump will always put the prosperity and security of America first.
That said, tonight there's more criticism. Newt Gingrich, a big Trump supporter, tweeting, "It's the most serious mistake of his presidency and must be corrected immediately." Then again, there's that other question. Will any of it stick? The midterm elections are getting ever closer, but this is hardly the first time Trump's taken heat, and he's stared down his critics before and moved on. Often. So we'll see. Ian?
So, Paul, as you took us through it, strong reaction in Washington today. We heard from the vice president. What about others in the White House?
Yeah, well, setting aside that Trump has survived criticism before, look, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in any government that thinks a private one-on-one session with Putin in these circumstances was a good idea, let alone the rest of the meeting. Or that, you know, not having a better response ready for the easily predictable questions that would follow. And you can imagine what they're thinking in the White House tonight. There are already some reports of some staffers asking a reporter, how bad was it? And this is a White House that has to parse and reinterpret the unexpected declarations of the president almost daily, usually with lower stakes than today. Trump will be going to Capitol Hill tomorrow for meetings with Republican lawmakers. No doubt, Ian, he is in for an earful.
But to repeat your question, will it stick? We can't tell tonight, that's for sure.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's not the first time Donald Trump has been at odds with his own intelligence community, but siding with Russia on the world stage over his officials was, for many, stunning, partially because of the case they have made. Here's a brief look at the evidence.
The indictment charges 12 Russian military officers by name for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 presidential election.
The charges make it clear the U.S. has a case against Russian intelligence, allegedly hacking into Democratic Party email servers and stealing the database of 500,000 registered voters. It's the most detailed accusation yet of election meddling by the Kremlin. And Robert Mueller's probe has shown no sign of slowing down.
Russia has been the most aggressive foreign actor, no question.
Even the U.S. intelligence director says foreign adversaries attack American targets online each and every day. While there's no evidence Russia is trying to infiltrate the ballot box again in November's midterms, intelligence officials are already concerned.
The warning lights are blinking red again. We are just one click of the keyboard away from a similar situation repeating itself.
And so for many, it's all the more puzzling that President Trump accepted the word of Vladimir Putin over considerable evidence from the American justice and intelligence communities. And just hours after the Trump-Putin meeting, a 29-year-old Russian woman was charged with conspiracy for allegedly, secretly trying to influence U.S. politicians. The FBI says Maria Butina had exploited her close ties with the Republican Party and a gun rights organization while covertly working at the direction of the Kremlin. Butina's lawyer says the charges are, quote, overblown, denying she's a Russian agent. Her lawyer says she is an international relations student. Here's a look at what else we're working on tonight on The National. It's been compared to hot garbage and old diapers. So why are thousands turning out to see the world's smelliest flower? And we'll take you to a beach in Cape Breton that gives access to people who normally aren't able to visit. But first, much of the country in the grips of another heat wave. And if you've been feeling the effects, you are not alone.
We've had drought conditions before, but I feel this year seems to be a lot worse.
On this farm near Ottawa, the ground is bone dry. Even if they do get a bit of rain, the damage to some of these crops is already done.
We put on sunscreen, we brought hats.
In Calgary, people did anything they could to keep cool. Temperatures so high, officials warning to be on the lookout for heat-related illness. From east to west, heat gripped the country today. Take a look at Labrador City, where it got up to 29. That is 10 degrees higher than average, and it felt like 33. And that stretched all the way west to Kelowna and Vancouver, where the mercury soared into the 30s. Well, CBC meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff has been tracking the heat for us from our Vancouver newsroom. We heard that farmer Joe say just a moment ago that this year seems hotter than normal. Is it?
Well, Ian, I mean, it's not unusual to have heat waves across the country in our summer months, but this has been an exceptionally sweltering start to the summer season, almost from coast to coast. And in fact, it's this average of extremes that make up our seasonal temperatures. But I was looking at some of the major cities from Fredericton through Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and out towards Calgary and Vancouver. And most major cities in the east and the west coming in 1 to 3 degrees above our normal for June and half of July. So this has been a hot and a long start to the summer season, but it's not just the temperatures and the length of that heat, it's how far-reaching this hot and humid air mass is. A lot of that has to do with the blocking patterns that have been in place, sort of locking that heat in, allowing the air to cook for days. And that is a trend that is continuing with climate change, Ian.
So, Johanna, how long is this going to last?
Well, there's some good indication that the eastern half of the country will actually return to a more seasonal outlook for the next few months. We're looking at a building El Nino, which normally means warmer than normal temperatures for much of the country, but that trend is really just set in place for the west. So Alberta, British Columbia, our summer may have only just begun, and while it has been a slower start to fire season, that is of big concern with an outlook for July, August, and into September that looks to come in above seasonal. But for Ontario, Quebec, and out towards Atlantic Canada, temperatures should return to a more seasonal pattern after 3 rounds of heat waves to kick off the year. And Central Canada looks like seasonal will continue to be the story.
Always nice having you on the show. Thanks, Johanna.
You're welcome.
When a heat wave strikes, working outdoors can be miserable, and that's not the worst of it. There are serious health hazards, and some people are more vulnerable than others. Nicole Ireland looks at new research to find our personal limits.
After 3 hours of exercising in 36-degree heat while wearing a uniform, Louis Leclerc has a new appreciation for people who work outside every day.
Those have to be some of the hardest jobs to do when it's really warm.
Leclerc is a volunteer at the University of Ottawa, where scientists simulate the heat and exertion that outdoor workers experience. They've found that older workers are often more susceptible to heat stress.
And what's most important to understand is that as we age, we see that there's an impairment in our body's ability to dissipate heat.
That's partly because as people get into their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they don't produce as much sweat. Sweating is essential to cooling down the body.
So for these individuals, that means that as they're doing any kind of work, whether they're doing physical activity or whether they're sitting in the heat, that means that their body will slowly store more heat.
That puts older workers at greater risk of heat exhaustion or heat stroke, which can be deadly. But how someone reacts to heat also depends on other factors, such as how well they slept that night or how many days they've been working in the heat. So researchers are trying to come up with a way to measure heat stress in real time.
You can see here.
They're working with various companies, including Smart Cone Technologies, to develop equipment that monitors outdoor workers. It tracks data like age, health conditions, blood pressure, and the number of consecutive days they've been exposed to heat, then factors in the weather to predict their risk. Ultimately, they hope to develop wearable sensors for each worker to warn when the heat is getting to be too much.
There's no way that you can have just one heat stress monitoring for everybody. It has to be individualized.
Until that happens, researchers say it's important for employers and governments to realize older workers are generally at higher risk, a risk that will climb along with the temperature. Nicole Ireland, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto has seen too much violence this summer. Gunfire in crowded public spaces, even playgrounds. More than 200 shootings this year alone. Activists are challenging the city to fix that by taking a different tack. Not through arrests and more charges, instead treating violence as a community health problem, which can be studied, analyzed, and perhaps disrupted. As Ron Charles tells us, they're hoping this approach will save lives.
Stacey King stayed silent until now. Today, she wanted to express to members of the Toronto Board of Health the horror of what happened to two of her children last month.
My 5-year-old got shot in the stomach. We don't even know if she's ever going to have kids. You know what she said to me that day? Mommy, am I going to die? For a 5-year-old to know that, that is so wrong. My 9-year-old is fear. They hear firecrackers. They think it's gunshots. They're scarred for life.
That midday shooting in a playground full of children shocked the entire city. It, along with a recent spate of other gun violence, sent police, politicians, and community activists searching for solutions. Today, Toronto's Board of Health accepted a report based on months of research advocating that it treat gun violence like any other threat to the health of Torontonians. King says she felt compelled to come to City Hall today to show the Board of Health the toll that threat has already taken.
It's done a lot to the kids' school, it's done a lot to their friends, it's done a lot to the people in the community. A lot of the children are having nightmares. It's just the families are distraught.
A public health approach to gun violence involves using community health research to find the root causes, then, armed with evidence, come up with solutions.
Violence is a disease of poverty and inequality.
The head of Public Health Ontario says he has seen other cities use this approach.
Glasgow is Scotland's biggest city. It used to be known as the homicide capital of Western Europe. And now it's got the lowest homicide rates it's ever had.
Yes, so welcome.
At the Board of Health, Stacey King offered some ideas.
We have to have more mentorship programs. We have to have more resources. We have to have more jobs for our youths. We have to have more trades for them. We have to be there to support them because every youth is not like grows up to carry a gun.
One option, mentorship programs involving reformed ex-gang members and paroled prisoners to guide at-risk youth away from a life of violence. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
We're keeping track of a number of other developing stories tonight, including an update on the case of former child refugee Abdul Abdi. The threat of deportation is off for now after a ruling by a federal judge. Abdi came to Canada as a refugee when he was 6, but never got Canadian citizenship. When he got in trouble with the law, a deportation hearing was triggered, but a federal judge has called off the hearing, ruling that Ottawa failed to consider his rights. Officials could still choose to restart the process.
We know they need to learn about consent. We know they need to learn about cyber safety. We know they need to learn about gender identity and appreciation.
Mixed messages from the new Ontario government today on their plans for the province's sex education program. They now say students will still learn about issues such as consent and sexting. That's despite saying last week they're reverting back to the 1998 curriculum. The Premier, Doug Ford, has promised to do so during the election campaign, but last week's announcement sparked criticism. The U.S. has filed a complaint against Canada at the World Trade Organization, arguing that tariffs recently put on Canadian goods are justified, but that Canada's retaliatory tariffs are not. The U.S. has filed similar complaints against Mexico, Turkey, China, and the EU, accusing countries of punishing American workers instead of working to address trade issues. We're keeping track of a number of other developing stories tonight, including an update on the case of former child refugee Abdul Abdi. The threat of deportation is off for now after a ruling by a federal judge. Abdi came to Canada as a refugee when he was 6, but never got Canadian citizenship. When he got in trouble with the law, a deportation hearing was triggered, but a federal judge has called that off, ruling that Ottawa failed to consider his rights. Officials could still choose to restart the process.
We know they need to learn about consent. We know they need to learn about cyber safety. We know they need to learn about gender identity and appreciation.
Mixed messages from the new Ontario government today on their plans for the province's sex education program. They now say students will still learn about issues such as consent and sexting. That's despite saying last week they're reverting back to the 1998 curriculum. Premier Doug Ford had promised to do that during the election campaign, but last week's announcement sparked criticism. The U.S. has filed a complaint against Canada at the World Trade Organization, arguing that tariffs recently put on Canadian goods are justified, but that Canada's retaliatory tariffs are not. The U.S. has filed similar complaints against Mexico, Turkey, China, and the EU, accusing countries of punishing American workers instead of working to address trade issues. Well, we apologize for that. A portion of it was live, a portion of it was on tape, but we'll get that all fixed, and we'll be back right after this break. Summer days and afternoons spent lazing at the beach go hand in hand, but if you have mobility issues, those trips can be a distant memory. Wheelchairs and sand don't exactly mix. But as our Kayla Hounsel learned in Nova Scotia, there is a move to change that.
There's no question Cape Breton's Inverness Beach is beautiful, but now it's also accessible.
Here, just pull the strap here.
Visiting the beach is not something these seniors get to do very often, but they say it's easier now. Christine Hennigan is 74 years old.
Christine, what do you think of this ride you have?
Gosh, I'm just amazed. I never thought we'd have this.
Yeah, finally.
Community groups on a mission to make this the most accessible beach in Atlantic Canada have equipped it with mats that make it easier to walk, wheelchairs that can be pushed through the sand, and these chairs that float.
Doesn't matter if you have mobility issues, if you have problems with your feet and can't walk, problems with your grip. We looked at everything that we could do on this site to make it fully accessible.
The groups behind this project say their primary goal is to improve the beach for the people who live here in this community. But they also want people to visit here, and they want the rest of the country to make the same effort.
We want this right across Canada.
Callum McQuarrie has been a driving force behind the project. 23 years ago, McQuarrie was diving off the rocks on this very beach. He struck bottom and was paralyzed from the neck down.
I hit the bottom, and when I came to, I was laying staring at the bottom.
He's become a strong advocate for accessibility.
For years, I sat up on the boardwalk and just enjoyed the day with the breeze, the water, and the smell of the salt water. You can't beat it. I'm still a beach bum, but I'm not on the beach, but now I can be.
He says it makes him feel good to see others experiencing the ocean, and he's looking forward to getting in the water without someone having to carry him.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, when it gets a little warmer.
People here say the beach is something everyone should be able to enjoy. Christine Hennigan certainly can.
But this makes it much easier to be on the beach, and you enjoy it a lot more, I think.
She says she'll be on the bus every time it leaves the seniors' home, if this is where they're going. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, Inverness, Nova Scotia.
Coming up on the National Hour Foreign Policy Panel breaks down the Trump-Putin summit. Is the outrage in Washington fair, and how should the world respond? Plus, we'll head to the shores of Prince Edward Island, where an unlikely answer to climate change washes up on the beach all the time.
It's not a great big multi-million-dollar business, but it's a real business. And you're helping the cow, plus you're helping people, and you're helping the environment at the same time, so you're doing a good thing.
Before the meeting with President Putin, you called him an adversary, a rival, and yet you expressed hope that you will be able to bring this relationship to a new level. Did you manage to do this?
You know, actually, I called him a competitor, and a good competitor he is. And I think the word competitor is a compliment.
Their countries have been wary foes for decades, facing off over ideology and global influence. But today, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin showed just how closely their interests are aligned. When the two leaders spoke to the world after their closed-door meeting, a lot of people were shocked that Trump blatantly took Putin's side on the subject of Russian meddling in the U.S. election and dismissed the findings of his own intelligence agencies. And this raises some unprecedented questions. We're going to try to get some answers now. Riva Goujon is Vice President of Global Analysis with Stratfor, which advises clients on geopolitics. She's in Austin, Texas. And Philip Bump is a national correspondent with the Washington Post, and he's focused on decoding Trump's behavior before and after this historic meeting. He joins us from New York. Riva, let's begin with you. Were you surprised at what you heard in that news conference?
Surprised? No. I think we've had a number of different case studies on Trump now, and going into this meeting, Putin, of course, prepared very well for it. And I think he thought long and hard about what is going to be the best topic of discussion to really get the American president comfortable with him so that he can steer the negotiation. And of course, that topic very much centered on Trump's election victory and the sort of, commiserating over the criticisms coming from the press, from their political opponents, and demonstrating this very ardent political defense of the American president, even going so far as to propose different, ideas on joint working groups on the cyber issues and ideas that Trump actually seemed very receptive to. Of course, we know those are loaded with contradictions, but it did play very well to the American president. And I think you saw that comfort really come across in the press conference today.
So, Philip, maybe Riva wasn't surprised. I know a lot of other people were in the newsroom. We were looking at some of those moments in the news conference and, kind of shaking our head. You, as I said in the intro, have been decoding Trump's approach to this summit. What did you think as you saw him speaking today?
Yeah, I think it's certainly the case that one, looking at it from a distance, one shouldn't be surprised. Of course, Donald Trump is going to say that he disagrees with the Mueller investigation. Of course, he agrees with Putin that he has some plausible deniability about Russia's role in the interference in the 2016 election, because that's what Trump does. That said, though, it still is stunning that the President of the United States would stand alongside a longtime foe. Russia is, in some sense, I suppose, a competitor, but is very much a geopolitical foe of the United States. To stand alongside the president of Russia and make these assertions, to undercut his own intelligence agencies, to not only that, but go against decades of American precedent in not criticizing political opponents overseas and disparaging the Democrats, disparaging the investigation being conducted on behalf of his own Department of Justice, was astonishing. It was a remarkable, it was as though you had a kid who always behaved badly and then you took him into the middle of the opera and he got up on stage and started doing the same thing. Yes, of course, that's what he does, but you don't expect him to do it there, and when he does it there, the ramifications are enormous.
Let's listen to another excerpt from the news conference.
Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe?
I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay?
So, Riva, part of your job is to analyze geopolitics and shifting relationships internationally. I'm sure a lot of governments around the world were watching today and trying to do their own analysis. What would you tell them about the state of the relationship between at least Trump and Putin, but maybe the United States and Russia?
Well, I think on the personality level, there's still a lot of cause for concern for a number of U.S. allies. Clearly, you saw the ease in which Trump was standing alongside Putin. And again, just as you heard in that clip, just how receptive Trump was to Putin's proposals, which we know are incredibly complicated when we talk about just the notion of cyber interference in the United States. But still, the geopolitical competition between the United States and Russia is was very much entrenched. And I think Trump going into this meeting thought that he actually came in with some cards, you know, that he came off the heels of the NATO summit arguing for strong defense spending, hammering his NATO partners in the process. To him, that was a show of strength to Russia to say, look, I'm willing to do this to build a strong defense on the European doorstep of Russia. Of course, you know, when we step back and we look at it, this is the president openly quarreling with his European allies, and that feeds right into a Russian strategy of keeping the West divided. So there are different interpretations of this, but when we look at substance versus optics, there are some real substantive issues that are developing between the U.S. and Russia, where the United States is providing an effective check on Russia. You see that through the continued military buildups, through the institutional bonds between the United States and its NATO partners. There's a very interesting discussion taking place right now between the United States and Poland, for example, on a permanent base there. That is surely going to get Russian attention. And of course, we can't forget that strong congressional check that we have on any attempt by the president to ease sanctions on Russia unilaterally.
But when he was given an opportunity here to assess, on the one hand, what his own intelligence agencies are saying about Russia's meddling in the U.S. election and supporting Putin, he seemed to choose Putin. Did that concern you?
Well, this is not the first time as well that the American president has seemingly undermined his own intelligence agencies. We've seen attacks on the FBI. We even saw attacks on the CE and on the CIA very early in his presidency. And it's because he sees this investigation, these probes, these intelligence reports as personal attacks on him, on his election victory. So honestly, that's just a consistency. The manifestation of it, of course, is shocking when you see it, when he's standing next to a very ruthless world leader like Putin. But still, it's consistent behavior from this president.
And Philip, do these words matter? Does what happened in that news conference matter?
Yeah, absolutely, categorically. I mean, we're seeing an increased divide between President Trump as an individual and the actions of the United States government, which was just referred to. But we're seeing our allies overseas make that distinction as well. There's a report today from ABC News that they spoke with European leaders who said, we look at Donald Trump as separate from the United States itself. And the United States has done a lot of things to try and keep Russia contained, to try and maintain the same geopolitical stance in regards to Russia that it has had for decades and well preceding Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is an anomaly, but his words still matter. Yes, it is the case that he has said these things before. Yes, it is the case that we should expect him to undercut the intelligence agencies as regards what happened with the 2016 election. But there is no question that it is undermining the United States broadly by having a president of the United States who is so willing to defy what seems to be an obvious reality. When the Washington Post first reported on the hacking of the Democratic National Committee in June 2016, it was already at that time known that it was the Russians who were involved, absent any intelligence agencies' investigatory reports or results. We already knew that then. We know that now. And to have Donald Trump deny it for his own personal benefit is why our allies are having to distance Donald Trump from the United States more generally.
Now, the moment that news conference ended, Philip, we immediately heard some really strong commentary from journalists, from analysts, and I want to read you, and from politicians as well. I want to read you a couple of those. John Brennan, former CIA director, albeit under a Democratic government, said Donald Trump's press conference performance in Helsinki rises to and exceeds the threshold of high crimes and misdemeanors. It was nothing short of treasonous. And then John McCain, as we know, a former Republican candidate for president and certainly a longtime foe of Donald Trump's, though in the same party, said, among other things, no prior president has ever abased himself more abjectly before a tyrant. And so, Philip, I mean, these are people with good credentials, but they're also people who clearly are opponents of Donald Trump. When you hear that kind of rhetoric, help us in Canada understand, are they exaggerating?
I mean, obviously, they're subjective assertions, right? I'm not going to weigh in on whether or not they are exaggerating, but I will say to have such statements be issued against a sitting president of the United States, particularly in John McCain's case, to a member of his own party, is astonishing. It is unique. It is not something that happens. It is without precedent. These are not allegations, assertions that are made about presidents as a general rule. Certainly, it was the case that Richard Nixon did a number of things which were questionable. He clearly did things that were in violation of federal law. But even then, I think the assertion, what we're seeing said about Donald Trump now, after what happened in Helsinki, is something that stands apart. It is absolutely unusual, and that is a reflection of the unusual moment that Donald Trump presented on the world stage.
Well, last question to each of you, and Riva, first of all, given your expertise watching geopolitics, what are you looking for next?
Well, first, one big thing is arms control. That factored heavily into the agenda. There were vague references to the New START treaty, for example. We need to see details on that. Two is Syria. Putin seems to be brewing some kind of proposal around Syria and containing Iranian activity in collaboration with the Israelis. We'll need to see details on that. Three is sanctions easing. You know, we saw iconically Putin toss that ball to Trump, saying the ball is in your court. Ironically, the ball is really in Putin's court to try to shape the conversation around Syria, Ukraine, and any of these other issues to see if he can get some kind of sanctions easing. But again, that's where we still have very strong congressional oversight over the American president.
And Philip, what are you looking for?
Well, I think that all of those things that were just said are absolutely the case. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out. But I think it's worth pausing in this moment to remember how unique and unusual today was. Today was, for critics of President Trump, probably the worst case scenario for how that would have gone. If you had to come up with an idea of how poorly Donald Trump could have handled a relationship or an interaction with President Putin, that probably would have been it or close to it. And that's going to necessarily have political ramifications. There are going to be people who have long defended President Trump. Well, everyone's exaggerating. Things aren't as bad. Today was as bad as people feared things could get, and that will absolutely be something that whether or not Republicans finally take a stand against Donald Trump and say enough is enough, something will necessarily happen from this that will push to the side, at least for the time being, concerns about the details around what the administration will do in regards to Putin.
Well, really nice hearing from both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The National Today takes you inside our journalism every afternoon. You can go deeper on the top stories and get highlights on stories you may have missed. Today, read about the U.S. military's top commander in Afghanistan who says the U.S. is ready to sit down with the Taliban for direct peace talks. Subscribe to our newsletter at cbcnews.ca/The National. Tonight on The National, the first Canadian helicopters have arrived in Mali. They'll be part of Canada's role in supporting the ongoing UN peacekeeping mission. Ottawa has committed to sending a total of 8 helicopters to the country. Officials said they'd be fitted with special dust filters to help them operate in Mali's hot, dry climate.
It just exploded straight out at the boat. We could hear the rocks hit the boat and the people yelling.
Witness to a frightening scene off Hawaii's Big Island today. A boat taking tourists to see lava from the erupting Kilauea volcano was struck by a flying chunk of molten lava after an explosion nearby. That impact so powerful, the hot rock tore a hole in the boat's roof. 23 people were hurt. One of them was a woman in her 20s who suffered a broken leg. Canada is committed to cutting greenhouse gases that fuel climate change as part of our commitment to the Paris Agreement, pledging to cut emissions by about a third by 2030. But what's causing some of those pollutants might surprise you. Here are all the greenhouse gas emissions on the planet caused by human activity. You can see agriculture and forestry are among the biggest polluters. But drill down a little deeper and you'll see that cows alone contribute almost 10% of all emissions. It's the methane that they quite literally burp out. In fact, California already passed laws limiting methane output from dairy cattle by 40% in the next decade or so. But there are a lot of cows on this planet, about 1.5 billion of them, so this is something scientists and researchers have devoted a lot of time and money exploring. As Andrew Chang found out last fall, there is a very simple solution in Prince Edward Island. and the fix might have been right under our noses the entire time.
So we just walk along, we just shake a little bit in the ground.
So it's really just sprinkling on top of the feed that you already have?
Yes, that's it.
And so
Kent Rennie's dairy cattle are eating something most cows never even see in their lifetimes. But with every lick, they're actually helping the environment.
It's a bit of a weird idea.
It's a different idea for sure. And, you know, we said, well, we'll give it a try, no harm. And we seen a difference and liked the idea.
So here they are, cows on the cusp of something big. They don't really look any different from your average run-of-the-mill dairy cow, but it's what's going on the inside that's capturing the world's attention. You see, a lot of methane comes out of a cow's mouth. Some also comes out of the other end. But these cows have managed to reduce their methane emissions by 20%.
Feeding them seaweed.
Seaweed?
Yeah.
Do the cows like it?
Yeah, they love it because it's salty. It's probably the main reason they like to eat it.
Here's what we got. There's our Irish moss. There's our fufu. There's our rockweed.
This is Joe Dorgan over in Tignish, PEI. He used to milk cows for a living.
What did you call this, fufu?
Fufu. There's a real name for it is fusilaria, and then there's a Latin name, but that's all bullshit to me. I don't know what all that is. We call it fufu.
The way the story goes, many years ago, Joe was looking for new organic ways to feed his cows. He admits cutting methane emissions wasn't exactly top of mind.
How did you even get the idea that if you fed seaweed to cows, maybe it would do them some good?
Well, I knew, I always knew that it was good. The old people, they used it for their fertilizer and for their animal minerals and stuff for their animals years and years ago. So when I changed my my dairy herd organic, I wanted a source of mineral. So I said, let's use what we got.
So Joe, walk me through the process, how you turn the raw, dry stuff into what the cows
This is their raw product.
Yeah.
Put in here, goes up the conveyor belt in the hopper here, goes into our drum system. That takes out the rocks, the sand, as it's going through this here. That comes down into those tubs. It goes through our processor here then, or hammer mill, whichever you want to call it. And that does all the chopping.
Oh, so it's breaking up the clumps of seaweed into something.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what I was seeing over here, which is...
That's the product right here.
Oh, I see, just kind of this...
That's the finished product.
Like a little powder almost, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We figure it's trying to find a solution to a problem we didn't create, so. Well, it certainly makes you feel good because, you know, there's a lot of talk about greenhouse gases and, you know, cows are getting blamed for some of this and the greenhouse gases, even though they've been around for tens of thousands of years and it's not really their fault. If we can help with this problem, then that's great.
I wonder, can you make money from it too?
Well, we're hoping down the road we'll be able to sell some carbon credits from it, but you know, it's not why we're doing it. We started out doing it to improve cow health, and anything else that comes along is a bonus.
Is that something though that could be quite lucrative?
Oh, it could be for sure, because methane is, you know, quite more potent than carbon from the car. So, yeah, that's got possibilities to be an income.
Back in Joe's corner of the island, he too sees the financial benefit of this fix. He just needs more farmers to take notice.
It is a business there now. It's not a great big multi-million-dollar business, but it's a real business. And you're helping the cow, plus you're helping people, and you're helping the environment at the same time. So you're doing a good thing.
Tonight's moment is up next. First, though, it's not often you hear of a low-speed police chase, but a wild encounter on a highway in Central Florida has gone viral after a deputy sheriff ranted about the suspect on social media. Take a look.
The nerve of this guy. He's literally going 1 mile per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. I mean, the guy's easily 100. You shouldn't be out on the roadways to begin with. I tried to talk to him, and he snapped at me. I don't know what this guy's deal is. Come on, Grandpa, I got places to be. Everybody wants to drive slow with a cop car behind them. Can't get nowhere on time.
A reminder, you can always find great photos on our Instagram page. Today, a closer look at the images from the meeting between the U.S. and Russian presidents. Check us out at CBC The National.
Crawford, Thursday at 9 on CBC.
In Vancouver, people are lining up to see and get a whiff of the corpse flower, which literally smells like death. And yet, that's not a deterrent. Apparently, it is part of its charm. For the first time ever, one of them is blooming in BC, and the hype, it is real. And that is our moment of the day.
I heard that there was a really stinky flower, and so I really wanted to see it.
Meet Uncle Fester. That's the nickname of this rare tropical wonder. At nearly 2 meters tall, the plant is at its putrid peak.
I've heard dirty diapers, I've heard old, nasty locker rooms. It runs the gamut, but nothing pleasant. I haven't had anybody tell me that they actually enjoy the smell.
Native to the rainforests of Indonesia, the flower is among the world's largest and can take up to a decade before blooming. And this one at the Bloedel Conservatory in Vancouver's Queen Elizabeth Park finally started opening up last night.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, so I want my kids to experience it firsthand. It smells like a pool. Excuse my language, but...
Rotting meat, hot garbage, dirty diapers, not the things most people clamor to sniff, but that's exactly what's happening, and they only have about 48 hours to enjoy it.
The birds are still flying around in here. They haven't fallen over, and they're not writhing on the ground, so far so good.
Gas masks are unnecessary.
The notorious stench typically attracts pollinators like carrion beetles and flesh flies that feed on dead animals. But in Vancouver, the flower is drawing a whole other crowd, curious to take in that unmistakable odor. Some of them waiting up to 2 hours for the chance. So kudos to the Bloedel Conservatory. It's a pretty little place, but only about 1,000 people go there every day. 7,000 have been going because of the corpse flower. As for lining up for 2 hours, well, to each his own, but just a little hint, the Van Dusen Gardens, just a few blocks away, conventional flowers, smell sweet. That's the National for July 16th. Good night.